Hello friend, welcome back to my kitchen here at Seed and Sparrow Homestead. In today's video, I want to show you how I take a single whole chicken and use it for multiple meals for food all week long. Stretch the protein source a bit as well as the dollar. Hello, inflation. A whole chicken is usually the most affordable option, but I know so many people who have said to me, what am I supposed to do with an entire chicken? I know that's not everyone, but for those of you to which it applies, there are three things I do with a whole chicken. One is to cook the whole bird and portion out the meat to use over multiple meals. Sometimes I will just roast an entire chicken for the purpose of one meal, especially if it's one of our smaller birds. Or I will piece out the bird myself and then use the different cuts of meat for different recipes. So today we are cooking the entire bird and we're going to use the meat that way. But if it would be helpful, let me know if you'd like to see how I piece out a bird myself, which also helps to save quite a bit of money. Rather than having that done for you, you can save the money by buying a whole bird and do it yourself. So let me know if that's something you would like to see, and I can do another video on how I do that and in what ways I use those cuts of meat. So this is a 5.5 pound bird, and I chose to cook it by putting it in a soup pot, covering it with water, bring it to a boil, and then back down to a simmer and allow it to simmer for about 3 hours. I think I let this go for. But you can throw it into a crock pot. You can roast it whole. I prefer to spatchcock it when I am roasting. I think you get a better end result. Moist, tender meat, not dry and yucky. Who wants to eat dry chicken meat? So I ended up putting this into the fridge overnight. I ran out of time and I brought it out this morning and started to take it out of the pot, and it just started to fall to pieces. And that's honestly what I like to see. You know, the bird is done well. So I grabbed everything out of there, and here is the leftover broth, which we will be using. You can see it's nice and jiggly, somewhat gelatinous. And I'm gonna go through what is left over here and take out all of the meat. Now I will eat both white and dark meat. Matt, however, loves the dark meat. So I am just going to make sure I mix everything up really well so we have a little bit of both in each meal. Now once that's all done, what is left over, the trimmings, the carcass, is going to go into my crock pot. I'm going to cover this with some filtered water, throw in some veggie scraps, some ACV, some salt and pepper, and I'm going to allow this to cook down on low for about 24 hours. There's still lots of goodness in this carcass that can be drawn out, so we're going to make some bone broth, and it's just another way I stretch each chicken. I want to get the most use out of it possible. So after that's done, I'll strain that out, pop it into the fridge, and then we'll have some bone broth to sip on throughout the week or to use in recipes. So with what I'm left with here, I'm going to get this all chopped up, ready to go for my recipes. I like to divide it into equal portions. I'm going to use this over 3 meals. Depending on how many people you have to feed, you could possibly stretch it more. Right now I'm feeding 4 of us. So I'm dividing this into 3 equal portions, and I'm going to put them into some Ziploc bags. From this point, you could just pop these into the freezer if you're not fixing to have chicken for every meal this week. Turning our attention back to the broth, I had to stick it over on the stove. It was too gelatinous to get through my mesh strainer, but I wanted to strain it just in case I missed any bits and pieces of bone or other things I don't want in my broth. And this broth will be used in a few of our recipes, so that's going to get set to the side. The first recipe we're going to work on is a white chicken enchilada. And for that, we need some cheese. Another way I like to save money is to buy the blocks of cheese in bulk. It's a little bit cheaper than buying it pre-shredded, and it's also a bit healthier for you. There's no yucky coatings on it, but sometimes I buy the shredded cheese too, so you do what you got to do. Moving over to the stovetop, we're going to get started on this white sauce for the enchiladas. We've got 3 tablespoons of grass-fed butter in here. I'm going to melt down. And to that, I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. So we're just making a roux, a thickener. It is just equal parts butter to flour. We mix this up and you allow it to cook for about a minute, being careful not to let it burn. And then I got 2 of the cups of the broth out of the fridge, and we're going to slowly add that in here until we have a nice smooth sauce. To that sauce, I'm going to add an entire brick of cream cheese. This is 8 ounces of cream cheese. Normally I would use a cup of sour cream. I did not have any sour cream on hand. Cream cheese will do just fine. To complete this sauce, I'm going to open up a can of my salsa here. This is peach salsa. I thought the peach would go really well with the chicken. So we're going to dump this entire 8-ounce can into our sauce here and call it a done deal. So now we're going to get the filling all mixed together. So I have 1/3 of that chicken I reserved, already shredded up, going into my bowl here. And to that, I'm going to add 1.5 cups of the shredded cheese. I used Monterey Jack. You can use whatever your heart desires. For a little bit of seasoning, we're just doing some salt and pepper, as well as some cumin and some paprika. But again, you can use whatever seasoning you prefer. And get this guy mixed up well, and then we will be ready to start assembling. I'm going to take a little bit of our prepared enchilada sauce and coat the bottom of my 9x13 baking dish. I have my oven preheated to 375, and now it's time to start assembling. This is such a quick and easy meal, especially when you already have that meat prepared. So to add to the bulk of this meal and to add some more protein, I grabbed a can of refried beans from the pantry, and I'm just going to spread maybe like a tablespoon and a half on each one of the tortillas. Now, to save some more money, you could make some tortillas yourself. I have a video I can link on the screen and down in the description if you have the time to do that. I did not, so store-bought tortillas it is. I am putting in about 1/4 cup to maybe 1/3 cup of filling in each one of these tortillas, rolling it up burrito style and sticking it into my 9x13 pan. Now we're ready for the sauce, so I'm just going to grab that and pour it all over the top, making sure to coat them really well. We're going to finish it off with some of the shredded Monterey Jack, and this goes into the 375-degree oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. You can put it underneath the broiler for a little bit if you'd like the cheese to get nice and golden brown and bubbly. Who doesn't? I always do it, but always make sure to set the timer because, like I've said before, I'm often a victim of the broiler, even if the timer is set, and it gets burnt. To go with our enchiladas, I'm going to make some rice. I use some more of that chicken broth here to cook the rice in, add some extra flavor and some more nutrients. Rice is another really affordable side, and it's something I always keep stocked in my pantry. This is a yummy one, you guys. I topped it off with some tomato jalapeno salsa from the pantry, rave reviews from the hubby and the kiddos. This is also another really easy meal to turn into a freezer meal. You can pop it into the freezer after you have prepared it before baking it, or you can just go ahead and bake it and then allow it to cool down and pop it into the freezer then. And then obviously after you've thawed it, you just prepare accordingly. On to recipe number 2. I decided to do a soup. We're gonna do a creamy chicken corn noodle soup. So I have prepped my carrots and celery. I did about 2 cups of each. I'm gonna get some olive oil in my pan here, heating up, and then we're gonna saute those two together. Now, I don't use onions a whole lot in my cooking, nor do I use garlic, at least not fresh. I will use garlic powder and onion powder, but if you'd like those 2 elements to be in your soup, then go ahead, prep them now, and saute them alongside the celery and the carrots. Now we're going to add about 6 cups of very gelatinous broth going in here. I had a hard time getting it out of my jar. I had to give it a good old shake. We will bring this up to a boil, get it covered, and then allow it to simmer until the carrots are fork tender. Meanwhile, let's get some water boiling for our pasta. I'm just using these PA Dutch egg noodles that we like. They stay a little bit thick, and we just like the thicker, doughier type noodles, so we really enjoy these. We have achieved fork tender with the carrots, and sorry if you can hear some ruckus in the background. I am in the only spot right now that doesn't have children yelling, and we have the rabbits. They have the zoomies in the cage, so if you hear anything, that's what it is. So now we get to add in the rest of our ingredients. I added the chicken back in, as well as some seasoning. We did salt and pepper and some onion powder and thyme. Now to add in a whole can of sweet corn and then our noodles. I like to add in some of my home mixed poultry seasoning whenever I'm making a chicken noodle soup or something of the like. I think it adds some nice flavor. I can link the video where we made that together on the screen and down in the description. And then to finish the soup off, we're going to add 1 cup of heavy cream for a thicker, richer, yummier end result. This is a soup base that I'm probably going to end up making some in bulk and then putting it into the freezer without the noodles and the cream. That's not going to freeze so well, but the soup base will be ready to go, and then all I got to do is make some noodles and we have dinner. The last recipe I'm going to be making with this whole chicken is some pizza. We just recently found a pizza dough recipe that we really enjoy. I have tried so many, and this one actually only takes a couple minutes. There's no long rise time, and it turns out great. The only thing that would make it even better is if I had a pizza stone, which I do not, but perhaps one day. So this recipe is just 1 cup of warm water, not too hot, not too cold. You want to be able to stick your finger in there or else you're going to kill the yeast off. So we've got 1 cup warm water, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast. Mix that up, cover it, and allow it to get foamy for about 5 minutes. After those 5 minutes, we come back and you can see there's some bubbles that have formed on the top there. It's nice and foamy. So now we get to add in some salt, olive oil, and flour. I'm using some Redmond real salt. It's my favorite. I've used them for many years, and I actually have a discount code. If you're interested, I can put it here on the screen for some high quality salt. So we did 2 teaspoons of that and 3 tablespoons of some organic olive oil. And then we'll mix that up and stir in some flour. I am using the organic all-purpose flour that I got from Costco, the Kirkland brand. I'm really liking working with this stuff, and I've heard no complaints on the way it tastes. So we got 2 cups in here. The recipe, you can use up to 2.5 cups, but I always start with a lower amount, depending on just, the humidity, the moisture in the air, how dry things are. Just depends on how much flour I want to use. And this should be just a little bit sticky when you're done working with it. I only need it for about 30 seconds to a minute. You don't have to go crazy here. And then we're just going to allow this to rest for about 10 to 15 minutes. There is no rise time. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour and start working the dough. I am going to split this, not quite in half. I'm going to do a larger pizza for my husband and a smaller pizza pie for the kiddos. We're going to do 2 different flavors here, both using chicken. But we're going to start working our dough. You can use your hands and your knuckles and just start working it out into a round. I do a little bit of that and some of the rolling pin as well. So for the first pie, we're going to do a barbecue chicken pizza. So I opened a can of the barbecue sauce that we made during the pantry challenge pretty recently, and I gave it a taste. It has a really good flavor, but it honestly doesn't really remind me of a barbecue sauce. It's super sweet, really good, just doesn't scream barbecue sauce to me, but we used it and it worked, and I'll probably continue to make it because it does taste really good. It just doesn't scream barbecue sauce to me. So I laid that down for my sauce, and then I used some different cheddar blends, some Monterey Jack, and then we're gonna add the chicken pieces all over the top. I chopped up a red onion, add some color and some punch of flavor, and then I went out to the garden. I actually have some chives coming up, which is amazing, so I snipped some of those off and added them to the top. Drizzled a little bit more of the barbecue sauce, or not so barbecue sauce, and got this into a 425-degree oven for about 12 minutes. For the kiddos' pizza pie, I just opened a can of my pizza sauce. I didn't think they would love the barbecue sauce. They don't seem to love a whole lot of flavor yet. We're going to do kind of like a chicken parm style pizza for them. So I have some ricotta cheese that needed used from the fridge. We did mozzarella, we did some fontina, we did some Parmesan cheese sprinkled on the chicken, as well as some garlic powder. Topped it all off with some more Parmesan cheese because you can't ever have too much. A sprinkling of some oregano from the garden, and this guy joined the other one in the oven. Well, there you have it, friend. How I use one chicken to make meals for the whole week. Got 3 really inexpensive, easy ways to feed your family, and they taste good too. Thank you for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. I'm going to leave you with some pretty music and some footage of the feathered ladies getting some of the leftovers from the meals we prepared. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Comment if you don't mind. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love for you to be a part of this community. You all have a blessed day, and I will see you next time. Take care.